Hi.
How you doing, Tyler?
Pretty good. Can't complain.
What's that? Can't complain. Good.
Yeah.
Doesn't do any good anyway, right? Let's see. Let's give everyone a couple of minutes. JJ, is that you there? Good. Welcome, everyone. We'll give everybody just a minute. I heard from a couple of people who couldn't join us today, but I'm sure there'll be more. It's nice to see. Glad to see you showing up. We'll get going in just a minute. Welcome, everyone. I'm giving just a second for the people logging in right at the time, but I appreciate you being prompt and glad to see you all here this morning. Who would that be? Okay, I think I'm ready to go. Let me show you what we have in store for today. Hold on. All right, I think that's about got it. Just a second. Okay, so excuse me, I'm still trying to get my screen arranged so I can see okay. So this is what I have. I'm shifting gears again a little bit today. After grading your papers, it made me come up with a different plan for this week and next week and going into our spring break. So we'll be talking about that. But mainly I want to talk a little bit about your personal narratives. And I'm asking everyone to revise them, to make some kind of a correction. Some are more some are larger corrections than others, but everybody had something you could improve. And so I want us to focus on that. And I'm also, I'd said early on, I wanted to meet with you one-on-one. And last semester when I did that, I canceled a class and just had meetings all that afternoon. But since we only meet for an hour and 15 minutes, I really hesitate to cancel a class. And so I'm going to ask you to set up a one-on-one conference in the coming week, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And last semester it was really I just wanted to meet people, but this time I've now graded a few of your things, and I especially may need to talk to you about your revised essay or about the essay, your personal narrative. Some of you, I asked you explicitly to get in touch with me so that I could make sure you understood what I was saying about it. And so the one-on-ones are going to be more about your writing as well as just getting to know you a little bit better too. But anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then we'll go over your homework for next week. And part of the homework is going to be setting up that one-on-one conference. And we'll finish today. We had both girl and in the waiting room that you had homework about. Today, I hope we can discuss girl. And I'm going to save in the waiting room for next week and give you one more reading to take up next week in addition to your revision. So that's kind of our plan for today. So about your personal narratives, many of you did really good work, and it was gratifying to read it. Some of you told about things that were really difficult and really personal, and I was very honored that you felt like you could talk about such things, knowing that I would read them. And so I do think it's very healthy. The harder the subject, the more important it is to write about it, to think about it. But I do think it still takes a certain courage to share that with others. And so I was really grateful to see what some of you chose to write about. Uh, Everyone, though, I didn't read anything that didn't have some room for improvement. And so I had said that today I wanted to assign you a new essay, but I've decided it was more important to get you to try to revise the essay you had and to do that before you move on to your next writing assignment. So I'm not going to assign an essay today. I may give you a topic next week in case you want to work on it over your break, but it won't be due at our first class. Or wait, I'll have to think about that. Actually, you do have a week before the first class. Anyway, I'll probably give you an assignment next week that you'll have 2 weeks to do. Let's put it that way, rather than one today that will be due next week. And I hope that's clear. I'm sometimes just talking into the screen without being able to see you. It's easy to get lost. But I mainly want you to focus on improving what you wrote in your personal narrative. And if you do it, everybody has a chance to improve their grade with their revision. And you can improve it by a lot with the quality of your revision. A couple of you really wrote something that was quite good, but they're just conventions of language that you need to catch on to. And I want to see you addressing those, and that would improve your essay a lot. Again, I've asked you to talk. I might, when we get to setting up the conferences, I might say if I've asked you to contact me to set it up earlier in the week rather than later, because it means you have more that I would like you to work on. And if you are comfortable with the feedback I gave you, you might schedule it for Wednesday or Thursday instead of the early part of the week or this weekend. And I saw that some of you have already started revising, so you may be already done with what I was asking you to do. But anyway, I'm hoping that over the next week, I'll talk with everybody in the class. That's the goal. All right, I want to talk a minute just about some common errors. I did see a lot of essays where I saw a lot that were very good. They were really well thought out, but there was a good bit of evidence of not using the whole writing process. And by that, I mean, I felt like I saw really simple errors that if you had reread and looked carefully, you wouldn't have left there. And so I want you to be sure you get in the habit of checking yourself. And, here are the most obvious kind of examples of that is just careless capitalization. I'm sure everyone in here knows that if you use the pronoun I, it's a capital. And I know that too, because even those who sometimes put it as lowercase, put it as uppercase other times. but you really just need to do that consistently. And if you leave a lowercase I, it's basically saying, I'm not paying enough attention here. So you don't want that kind of error. Another kind is when you start a sentence, you've got a period, you're clearly starting a new sentence, but you start it with a lowercase letter. I know you know that sentences start with a capital letter. And writing is really a matter of learning one part of writing is learning to control and master certain conventions like capitalization, like punctuation, like the meanings of words. And but it differs from spoken speech in that you do have to punctuate. You have to use capitalization sometimes. You have to use periods, commas, semicolons, question marks, exclamation points, and so on. And so you use those to help make the pace of your writing clear, and you need to get control of those. I'm going to go over a couple of, the teachers have what we call pet peeves that are just small things that annoy them. And one of mine, I want to help you. Comma splices are probably bigger than a peeve because there are good things to understand. And we're going to look at those a little bit. Almost everybody had at least one comma splice. And I want you to just understand what that is so you can learn to control them better. And this is a pet peeve. I always react when I see quotations punctuated and inappropriately. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So all of these first few common errors are really simple things and easy to learn to correct, okay? Uh, Things that got more into rewriting is like whether you could have just developed something more, something that you said in your narrative just wasn't quite as clear as it could be, or it might have been made more powerful with just a little bit more detail or with an example. So that would be an example of more development needed. And that was fairly common too, though I did have some that were really deep and detailed, but you can almost use it as a rule of thumb. The shorter your uh, essay is, the more likely you are not developing things as much as you could have. Uh, and then, also there were, almost all the essays had some spot, some sentence or two that just weren't as clear to me as a reader as they probably may have been to you. And so one of the things you want to do to use the writing process is part of why you try to finish on Monday so you can read it on Tuesday is you kind of reading it with someone else's eyes and see if what you wrote, what you wrote didn't make sense to you, it's not going to make sense to anyone else. And so you need to take the time to be sure that you're being as clear as you could be. So that's just kind of an overview. I don't know how helpful that is entirely, but I'm trying to alert you. I hope this first part's easy, right? And I think that you'll see that these two things, comma splices and punctuating quotations, are pretty easy too. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of things. So, there's a lot of terminology around sentence errors, and sometimes people just speak of run-on sentences, and a run-on sentence it just means it's punctuated incorrectly, that you have more than one sentence. And one form of that is what some call a fused sentence, and another is what some call a comma splice. When I first encountered these terms, a fused sentence was a run-on and a comma splice was a separate thing. But this is saying, here, one set of terminology says these are both different forms of run-on. So let's see what that is. A fused sentence, here's a simple sentence. Herb talks too much. Nobody seems to mind. Herb talks too much. Nobody seems to mind. There are really two complete ideas there. Herb talks too much. And a second idea, nobody seems to mind. And this is called a fused sentence because those two are run together. And that is incorrect and this is a really simple sentence. It's not like this is that confusing, but the more words in the sentence, the bigger the error. But sometimes in fiction and poetry, you have people do this all the time. It can be a creative way of jamming ideas together. But in the kind of writing we're doing, you're trying to show that you understand basic punctuation. And this isn't helpful to punctuate that way, to let those two things go together without any other punctuation or conjunction. So there are different ways you could, no, here's a comma splice. This would be that same sentence with a comma between the two ideas. Herb talks too much, nobody seems to mind. Now here, let me say, I almost did it eliminate incorrectly because more and more comma splices show up in all kinds of writing. But as a student, if you're using them too much, it's making clear you don't quite understand the concept. And so you really do need to get control of it and minimize it at least. One place where this isn't such a big error, both of these ideas are short, right? Herb talks too much, nobody seems to mind. They're almost connected. And that's why you might think of commas adequate, but it's still two separate ideas. So how do we correct this? I mean, there's some simple ways. The simplest is to make two sentences. Herb talks too much. Nobody seems to mind. Another way is to use a coordinating conjunction. Herb talks too much, but nobody seems to mind. And there are a lot of other, this is fanboys is a abbreviation, an acronym, I guess that is, an acronym for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Okay, all of those are coordinating conjunctions. So this could be Herb talks too much and nobody seems to mind. You know, Herb talks too much yet nobody seems to mind. There are lots of things you could put there. And one reason I don't just correct your comma splices when I encounter them is I want you to think about what would be a better way. Do you want to leave it one sentence, but put in a and or a but or something, or do you want to make it two sentences? This is always the simplest. You can also do things like use what we call a subordinating conjunction. The terms are always more complicated to me than the words. Although Herb talks too much, nobody seems to mind. That would also correct that original sentence. You know, there are always other options. You know, this instead of a period that could have been a semicolon, but usually when I see long clauses put together, it's not like a semicolon. A semicolon would correct it, but two sentences is probably better. But anyway, that's just three ways. You can Google comma splices and find lots of information. You can find YouTube videos. And so it's easy to get more help. But I want you to know when I mark a comma splice, this is what I'm talking about. And I probably did see more comma splices and fused sentences, but I did occasionally see fused sentences where there was no punctuation between two whole thoughts. Okay, any questions on this? Had most of you been exposed to this terminology? Could I hear a yes or a no?
No.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Yeah, I imagine, I would think a lot of you had heard, but if you haven't, that's why I'm trying to put it there. And even if you've heard it, I'm trying to give you a reminder so you'll know what I mean when I mark things. Let me pause there too. Sometimes one of the things that's really hard about teaching a writing class, I never know when I mark a paper whether it's going to make sense to you. And often it's hard to know whether I'm saying too little or saying too much. And so that's one of the reasons I'm going to get you to revise, because that gives me a chance of seeing how well you caught on to what I was saying. But sometimes people say, and in Google Drive, it's very easy for me just to edit your writing. In other words, if you've misspelled something, put the correct spelling. If you've made a comma splice, put in a comma and a capital, start a new sentence. And some research says that you'll learn better by me correcting your writing than me trying to tell you that's a comma splice. And so it's not always clear what's going to be the best teaching method. But others say if I correct your writing, you might find that insulting, or it might, make you feel put down. And that's not the idea. The idea of me correcting it is trying to show you how it could be better as directly as possible. So think about that if I did correct anything, think about that when you look at it, because sometimes that's just the simplest way of trying to help you understand. Like if you one of the other common errors that I didn't list here. Several of you would be writing something that was in the past tense, but you would slip into the first into the present tense. Like you were saying something happened, and then you will say he says, which is present. And so just getting you to that tense shift is a subtle thing to make clear writing notes. But if I tell you you're jumping in and out, it means that you should, if you're writing in the past tense, stay in the past tense. That's all that it's getting at. And there can sometimes you're talking about in the past and you want to make it more immediate by making something sound like it's still happening. But generally, as a rule, if you're writing in the past, you stay in the past. If you're writing in the present, you stay in the present. Another little thing I saw a good bit of. All right. Johnny, did you have a question? I'm hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know my thing was on. You're probably just hearing background noise. I
That's
can
okay.
mute.
Just mute it. Just mute it if you don't mind. It's all right. And speak up whenever you need to. All right. Here's my pet peeve. The pet peeve is just punctuating quotations. And the reason I want you to learn this is it's a good example of a writing convention that you just learn by paying attention to other writing. Okay. And so I've got really simple examples here. But when the class started, he said, "Get out your books." What I want you to notice is that, excuse me, here, let me, yeah. Bear with me a second. What I want you to notice is this, that the period is inside the quotation. What I see a lot of is this, excuse me. All right. And one of the things that makes this really confusing is this is actually the way in Britain that they punctuate quotations. So they also use single quotes. But in American written, the American written convention is to put the period inside the quotation. And if it's a direct quote, like he said, you do introduce it with a comma. I'm not sure why that quote is backwards. Let's see if it'll do it again. There. All right. So the simple thing is, I want you to recognize that. Gets a little more complicated if you have a question mark. Mary asked, "Are you wearing your red dress?" Well, this quote ends in a quotation, so I don't need to put a period after it. Or excuse me, the quote ends in a question mark, which is ending punctuation. So I don't need to put a period after it. I just let the question mark stand. Sometimes though, you're asking a question with a quote, but the question's not inside. Like what if somebody said, "Did he say get your books out?" Well, "get your books out" was a statement, but this is being asked as a question. So therefore the question mark's outside the quotation mark. None of this is life-threatening. It's not a big deal, but it's a little convention that you need to get a grasp on. And the way that you learn things like this, you might look up rules. If you Google punctuating quotations, you'll get a nice set of rules with a lot of examples that are better than what I've given you. You also can just pay attention to what you read. When you look at a newspaper article or a magazine article, look at the quotations and see how they're punctuated. And eventually that sinks in and you learn how to do it yourself. And even if you write it wrong, if you're in the habit of putting the period after, when you reread, you learn to correct it. So again, this is a small thing, but it's an example of something you want to just not ever have to think about again. You just want to do it correctly, and then it'll be that much easier. Okay, so those are the simple errors that I marked on people's papers that I wanted to comment to all of you about. But last week, let me go back. Hold on. This is the slide I showed last week, that we had 2 more classes left, and I wanted to have your papers graded by today, and I would assign a revision task, but I'd also give you another essay today that would be due next week. That's what I'm changing. I'm not doing that. Instead, I'm giving you the revision task, but I'm not giving you the new essay today, okay? I'm not doing that. You won't have a new essay to write this week. So what I want you to do instead is to set up a one-on-one meeting. And depending on how much there is to talk about in what you wrote, the more there is to talk about, the longer it would be. If there isn't much to talk about, we'll probably meet very briefly, but you should plan on like 10 to 30 minutes, depending on how much we need to talk about your essay. I started to put a sign-up sheet, and but I just think it's probably simpler if you mail me on 2 times that you're available, and preferably on different days. And then I can try to accommodate your time. Instead, you know, I know many of you are working. I know many of you have children. You have various conflicts. So instead of me dictating a time, you can write me. I'm not available on Mondays before 1 and on Wednesdays before 1. And I probably should have blocked. I'm taking classes Monday afternoon in the early, like from 5:30 to 7:30 to 5:30 to 7:30, and on Wednesday from 6:30 to 8:30. So maybe those 2 days, it's also not great to get me in the evening, but I could probably talk with you other evenings if those are good times. Just propose the time. If it's not a good time, I'll let you know. But send me an email with 2 days, 2 different times when you think you could meet. It's okay for that to be Saturday or Sunday, you know, whatever is open for you, and I'll see if I can accommodate you. Okay. And so that's your main assignment there, is to set up your conference. Now, what I left off here, excuse me. Oh, excuse me just a second. What I left off here, though, is complete, revise your, or I should just say, just revise your personal narrative. Okay, I left that off of there. So set up your task, and you may need to talk to me before you revise. If what I said to you made sense, feel free to revise. You'll also know, those of you who've already looked in your folders know that I made a copy of your essay, and I wanted you to revise the copy. The reason I did that, if you revise the original, when you correct something, my comments disappear. And so I can't remember what I was trying to tell you needed to improve in it. And so by making the copy, I hope I can at least check back if I need to. So please be aware that when you go to your essay folder, there's a copy of your essay. I put it in your feedback information, so I hope it was clear. But do work with the copy rather than your original, so that I can go back and compare what you turned in to begin with. I'm going to give you one new reading for this week. It's a fairly short story called Bullet in the Brain by Tobias Wolff. And I want you to read and study it, and I'm going to give you some study questions on it. And then again, keep up with your journal writing. Probably this is a week, at least now and over the break, I'll be looking at your journal as well as your homework, as well as trying to meet with you. So try to be sure that you're keeping up there. Okay, Bullet in the Brain. Let me show you. I guess that the title, I was trying not to be a spoiler, you know, or give away the story, but the bullet in the brain kind of makes it clear somebody gets shot in this story, right? And you'll see that it's set in a bank where people are in a line in a bank, and some robbers come in threatening everyone. And one man, the focus of the story, is a man named Anders. And he reacts to the gunman and chats a lot in the line, and he winds up being shot. So I'm not really giving a lot away, because sometimes it helps to know the plot, because you know where you're headed. But the bullet in the brain makes it clear somebody's going to get shot. So here's what I've got. I've got 3 questions for you. And these are in your assignment folder, but let's just look at them here for a second. Based on what he says and how he behaves in the line at the bank, what is your impression of Anders? Do you like him? Why or why not? All I'm trying to get at there is, how would you describe his character? What kind of person is he? I hesitated to say kind of person, but what's your impression of him from what he says he does? And does he seem a likable person? Why or why not? And think about your own reaction to him. The really fascinating thing about this story is that when he does get shot, there's a long list of things that he does not remember in his final moment. And so one of the things I want you to do, the next question is, what stands out to you about this list? What is that list about? Why do you think he did not remember these things? So consider that as you're reading, and that's what you'll write about afterwards. Then he does remember one thing. The story remembers with the last thing that went on in his brain. And I want you to look at that and think, why do you think this memory was his final one? Why did that be the thing that he carried away? And why was that memory important to him? Okay, so this kind of gives you an idea of the structure of the story. It begins in a bank. Some robbers come in. There's a shooting. And then it shifts completely to Anders, what's going on inside of Anders' brain, his thoughts as he's dying, I guess we would say, from that bullet. So this will give you, that should help you orient you to the story, and I hope you'll get a lot from it. And it should be enjoyable next week to talk about In the Waiting Room, which is a young girl coming into consciousness in some way, and this story where we have a man's last moment, and we look at what was in his consciousness there. Okay, and your next essays, I'm going to give you some topics related to the flowers, In the Waiting Room, and Girl, and I'm going to come up with a one for this story if I can as well too, and we'll see. But those, so you can expect your readings, your next writing to come out of the essays, or excuse me, out of the stories and poems we're reading right now. Okay, any question about your homework? Okay, so let's see. So here, we're going to talk about Girl now. And then we're going to, what we're going to do this by, I'm going to play a video, a YouTube video of Jamaica Kincaid reading this story. And then we're going to discuss it and describe its tone. And if we have time, and I think we will, we're going to talk a little bit about some ideas from Sigmund Freud and how they apply to what's going on in this story. All right, so let me stop the screen share. All right, good, nice to see. When I have the slides up, I really can't see who's here, so it's nice to see who all showed up, and glad that you're here today. All right. While I've got the screen open, and can we, how many of you have seen already the comments I gave you on your essays?
I have.
I did.
Good. Well, you know, isn't what happens when I write in your folder, you get a message that you've gotten information. Is that true?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So anyway, you should be notified, but now I hope that you'll go back for sure, if you haven't already. Both open your essay, because there'll be comments in the essay. And then in the document I have that says essay feedback, that's where I've written you a note in addition. So you want to look at both things to think about the feedback. Now, let me ask one more question. When I'm looking at this screen, I've got one iPhone that I believe is Hannah, and I have a second iPhone. Who's in the second iPhone? iPhone 2?
I think it's me, Johnny. My computer died, so I moved over to an iPhone.
Well, you know, I'm seeing you in a different place from the iPhone too, but
Oh, maybe then never mind.
I mean, I think it looks like it's Amin. Thank you.
Oh, someone just answered you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. I just wanted to know who all was here. All right. Now, let me see what else. Okay. Excuse me a second. All right. So now I'm going to go to just right. No, wait, excuse me, that wasn't right. Here, hold on just a second. Okay, so if you have your copy of Girl, you may want to look at it while she's speaking. And let me go slower. If we were in class, the way I usually teach this story is we go around the room and read it together, where everybody reads one of the clauses, one of the statements that the girl is going on that's in the story. And so we hear a lot of voices reading the different things. But it's hard. I didn't think I could do that very well with the Zoom class. But let's listen. And then even after we read it aloud, listen to Jamaica Kincaid, and sometimes we watch a video that dramatizes it too. But I'm just going to stop today with her reading. So let's get ready to hear her. And if you have the story, you may want to get it in front of you, but you can just listen to.
It's called Girl, and it goes like this. Wash the white clothes on Monday and put them on the stone heap. Wash the color clothes on Tuesday and put them on the clothesline to dry. Don't walk barehead in the hot sun. Cook pumpkin fritters in very hot, sweet oil. Soak your little cloths right after you take them off. When buying cotton to make yourself a nice blouse, be sure that it doesn't have gum on it, because that way it won't hold up well after a wash. Soak saltfish overnight before you cook it. Is it true that you sing Benna in Sunday school? Always eat your food in such a way that it won't turn someone else's stomach. On Sundays, try to walk like a lady and not like the slut you are so bent on becoming. Don't sing Benna in Sunday school. You mustn't speak to war frat boys, not even to give directions. Don't eat fruits on the street. Flies will follow you. But I don't sing Benna on Sundays at all, and never in Sunday school. This is how to sew on a button. This is how to make a buttonhole for the button you have just sewed on. This is how to hem a dress when you see the hem coming down, and so to prevent yourself from looking like the slut I know you are so bent on becoming. This is how you iron your father's khaki shirt so that it doesn't have a crease. This is how you iron your father's khaki pants so that they don't have a crease. This is how you grow okra far from the house, because okra tree harbors red ants. When you are growing dasheen, make sure it gets plenty of water, or else it makes your throat itch when you are eating it. This is how you sweep a corner. This is how you sweep a whole house. This is how you sweep a yard. This is how you smile to someone you don't like too much. This is how you smile to someone you don't like at all. This is how you smile to someone you like completely. This is how you set a table for tea. This is how you set a table for dinner. This is how you set a table for dinner with an important guest. This is how you set a table for lunch. This is how you set a table for breakfast. This is how to behave in the presence of men who don't know you very well. And this way, they won't recognize immediately the slut I have warned you against becoming. Be sure to wash every day, even if it is with your own spit. Don't squat down to play marbles. You are not a boy, you know. Don't pick people's flowers. You might catch something. Don't throw stones at blackbirds, because it might not be a blackbird at all. This is how to make a bread pudding. This is how to make dukuna. This is how to make pepper pot. This is how to make a good medicine for a cold. This is how to make a good medicine to throw away a child before it even becomes a child. This is how to catch a fish. This is how to throw back a fish you don't like. And that way, something bad won't fall on you. This is how to bully a man. This is how a man bullies you. This is how to love a man. And if this doesn't work, there are other ways. And if they don't work, don't feel too bad about giving up. This is how to spit up in the air if you feel like it. And this is how to move quick so that it doesn't fall on you. This is how to make ends meet. Always squeeze bread to make sure it's fresh. But what if the baker won't let me feel the bread? You mean to say that after all, you're really going to be the kind of woman who the baker won't let near the bread?
Okay, bear with me just a second. I want to put the text up on the screen. You can see that now, right? And I hope you have it open too. But let's just sort of, again, you know, I can't see you, you can't see each other. So let's just, it's perfectly fine to start talking. If two of you start talking at once, then one of you just defer to the other and don't worry about being too polite. If both of you do it, whoever defers can go next. Okay. But here's the first thing I want to ask you. I just want the slide that I would have put up, but I can't put the slide up and show the text at the same time. It just says, here's some basics. We're going to talk about some basics about girl. Who primarily is speaking throughout this story? Who is the speaker?
A mother.
Okay, and Tyler, is that you?
Yes.
Tyler, why do you say a mother?
Well, because I felt the tone of the poem felt like rather than just like some person talking to a kid. I felt like it was the way a mother would nag a child.
Sure. No, and you know, let me say that certainly sounds sensible to me, right? And so I think a mother is the mother speaking, and you said a kid. Who do we think's hearing all this?
Her daughter.
Yeah, her daughter. But you know, all I want us to ponder, we don't really know for sure. Who else might it be besides a mother? What are some other possibilities?
A grandparent.
Yeah, well, true, a grandparent. And Tyler, let's just see. Let's let someone else speak now too. A mother, a grandmother. What are some other possibilities? Just because.
For herself, you know.
I'm sorry. Who was that?
This is Hannah. She's speaking for herself.
Oh, you think it's the girl speaking for herself?
Yes, I thought like that.
What gives you that idea?
I don't know. When I read it, I just feel it. She's talking for herself. She's advising herself, and she lay out everything what she's thinking.
Well, you know, I think that's an interesting insight in this way. I do think part of what this is about is whatever advice and instruction she's gotten, in some sense, she's internalized them, right? She's hearing them. They keep playing in her head, we like to say. Some of you use that, somebody used that expression in their essay. But okay, we've got mother, grandmother, even the young girl herself, just talking to herself. And we'll come back to that in a minute because there's another reason that kind of plays out here. What's another possibility? I don't mean to, I think mother is the simplest and most obvious, but who else might be giving this advice?
The society.
society? Just, she could be hearing it in general. What about in a more personal way, up close to her? What's another, all I'm getting at, let me not be cryptic. Okay. I think it's a maternal voice for sure. And the simplest thing is to say it's a mother and daughter. It could be an aunt and a daughter. It could be a grandmother. It could be whoever raised this girl. Okay. And then Hannah, that's a really interesting thought. She's heard these things so much, she now just tells them to herself, right? Isn't that what you're suggesting?
Yes, I don't know, for some reason when I read it, it's just like she's thinking, and write herself in her mind. And yeah, I just feel it. She's speaking for herself.
I kind of got the same exact, like, when I was reading it, I heard the same thing, kind of, that she was reciting what she's been told her whole life and then kind of putting her own ideas in it.
Yeah, Johnny. And, let's say too, it's not like you can't, one of the next questions, what's the situation? It's hard to picture this is one conversation, right? This isn't like, it's hard to picture this is just the mother standing there telling her all these things, right? It's more like things that she's heard and is carrying with her, okay, that you think that she probably heard over time. But a simple thing, a couple of things are in italics, but I don't sing Benna on Sunday, and I don't sing Benna on Sundays at all, and never in Sunday school. And then later, but what if the baker won't let me feel the bread? Who's saying those things that are in italics? Who's speaking?
I think that's her saying those things in italics. Like, it's probably not what she says out loud, but it's what she thinks when she's told the things she's told. Like the Sunday schools is like, she's saying that she never sings it in Sunday school. So why is she being told something that she knows not to do?
Right. Very good, Kalia. And and notice that there are just a couple of places. She's largely silent, right? But there are a couple of places where we do think we're hearing from the girl directly. I was asking about the situation, but I think we've kind of gotten into that directly. I'm pretty sure this is not a single lecture, right? This is not just something, she wakes up one morning and her mother or whoever, this maternal voice, it says it all until, she has to stand there and listen to it. It's much more like these are things that she's heard over time and she's still carrying with her, the voice in her head some way. And I think that's the easiest way to think about it. Let me just ask one thing about the form. What's unusual about the punctuation?
Yeah, I just realized it's kind of semicolon. It's we can use it, I think, for sometimes instead of putting period.
Yeah, there are no periods. There are no periods, capitals through here. Everything's joined, and I think that was Hannah. Everything's joined by a semicolon, right? Wash the white clothes on Monday and put them in a stone heap. Wash the color clothes on Tuesday and put them on the clothesline to dry. Don't walk bareheaded in the sun. The whole thing is joined by semicolons until we get to the question mark at the end. So realize grammatically, this is one sentence, okay? This is one long sentence. And so it's all, and you could hear Jamaica Kincaid was reading it in a fairly crisp pace, but it's all just one long sentence. So what do you think this is about? Let's hear some ideas. What are some ideas for, what do you think this is about? What seems to be the nature of the advice? What's going on here? What does the mother want the daughter? What's the mother trying to teach the daughter? All right, let's take a simpler thing. We'll come back to that in a second. Where do they live? What are some clues? Where do you think this takes place? And we don't know, right? There's no place named, but from some of the details, where might we picture they live?
Seems like somewhere that's really hot, Yeah,
Good, Abdi. What makes you say hot, first of all?
I think it's because she gives herself like a piece of advice to not walk outside. Yeah, right there. Don't walk barehead in the hot sun.
Yeah. Okay. That's one quality. What are
I
some,
would.
go ahead.
I actually searched up one of the things that she was wanting to plant, and I believe that in Florida they plant them. I forget what it was.
Are you talking about the okra?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and what about, so Florida came to mind, you mean, Jason, right? That's what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay. What are some other ideas about where it is and what are the clues we have?
To bounce off of what Jason said, when I looked it up, it said that okra was native to Ethiopia, I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think it's a native of there. It's grown other places now too. But let's even look at that. They're growing their own food, right? What might that say? Does this seem like an urban setting or a rural setting?
I think they're in Jamaica.
What, Jay?
I think they're in Jamaica.
Okay. It's one of the things. What makes you say that, Jay?
Some of the stuff that she said, like this, how to.
Like what?
I don't know if this seems like. It seems like it's like based somewhere that's I forget what is it called, Caribbean, like Caribbean place maybe.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think that might make us think that, first of all, it's written by a woman named Jamaica Kincaid. And right. And it also has, there's a harbor mentioned, isn't it? Or the wharfs. The wharfs are where boats would come in. So that makes you think it's on the water somewhere. And but just the fact that there's a little bit of growing their own food from the food that's named. That it's okra. What's that other dish that comes later? Is it dashin or something like that? And Benna, I take it as a kind of a Caribbean hip hop, the Benna music that she mentioned. So, and so I think of it, it could be rural. It also could be a city, it could be a city in the Caribbean. Oftentimes people have gardens in the city. Just the fact you're growing your own food doesn't mean that it's rural. But it does feel, but I think it's good to just kind of think about where that is. But, I said, what's the story about? Let me say that differently. What seems to be the main focus of the advice? What kind of advice is the girl hearing?
Don't become the slut she's so intent on becoming.
There's a real undertone, right? That's the one thing that gets repeated. The mother is clearly having concern that this girl is trying to somehow caution this girl not to become a slut. So what does the fact that she's thinking about that tell us about the girl's age?
It's that she's likely in her teenage years.
Yeah, she's likely in her teenage years. She's actually, sexually possible, or something. And that's part of where that comes from. And I shouldn't even say the main focus of the advice, because she gives a variety of advice. What are some other advice besides don't become a slut? What's some things get repeated more than others, but what's some of the advice that you hear here? What kind of things is she trying to teach her?
Basically to behave like a lady.
A lot of emphasis, right, Jay, on what it might mean to be a lady. And what does it mean to behave like a lady? Give me an example or two, Jay.
It says, this is how you iron your, where's it about? This is how you iron your father's shirt or something like that. Oh,
Good.
yeah. Oh, yeah. This is how you iron your father's khaki shirt so that it doesn't have a crease.
Good. And then there's a lot of emphasis on setting tables, right? And you know, like one thing here is she's kind of prescribing, you know, telling her this is how you are a woman, which you may or may not agree with in just exactly those terms. But there is a lot about how to be a lady and how to be a respectable lady. Uh, what are some other things? What's it, any other, let's quickly hear a couple of other pieces of advice. What are some things that stood out to you?
Wash the color clothes on Tuesday and put them on clothes to dry.
I'm sorry, Jay, you broke up a little bit.
Wash the color clothes on Tuesday and put them on the clothes line to dry.
Yes. Yeah, she's giving her very clear instructions about how to do all your household duties. Okay. And there's one place here that's fairly cryptic, but let's see. She says, "Don't walk bareheaded. Soak your little claws right after you take them off." What do you think your little claws? What does that suggest to you?
Her feet.
Say that again.
Her feet.
Her feet?
Maybe her shoes. Yeah. The
Well,
walking.
so it could, you're thinking of socks. Anybody else have any ideas? Soak your little claws.
Could it be her underwear?
It sounds a little intimate to me, Kalia. I think that's I think that's a good guess there too. And you know, I would even take it one further. And you know, this please you know, take this in. I don't mean this in. This is awkward to say over Zoom, okay? But but actually saw this cited as another explanation too. Little claws, you know, this might be a place where you can't go to the drugstore and buy tampons, okay? And so little claws might be the claws that you use to help take care of your period. And so this is, but that and underwear both overlap. The point is it's something intimate. And if it was something about her monthly cycle, that's another sign that she's sexually active. And so in that sense, it's kind of a very relevant, or excuse me, sexually capable. We don't know whether she's sexually active, but the mother is very worried, right? That's where any young girl could be headed. Um, what do you think about her mother's coming back to that over and over again? How did you react to that? What did you think that, you know, we could ask what was the tone of that, but how did you react to her mother coming back again and again to, you know, warning her about becoming a slut? Did that make an impression on you?
It seemed, to me, it just seemed like she really wanted to save her daughter from herself.
Okay. And so Abdi, what is the positive part about trying to instruct the daughter that way? What's positive about that? You said save. What is she saving her from?
Well, it's the thing that she keeps on saying.
Right, but okay. But if, you know, we might ask, you know, what's so bad about being a slut? First of all, we could think of it that way. But why is she concerned about her being a slut? What is the risk if suddenly her daughter were labeled a slut or became one? What are some of the things what are the turns that her life might take?
Well, then she'd have to take care of a kid.
You know, one thing is definitely that, you know, that kind of say one consequence would be you could have a baby earlier than you're prepared for. I became a father at 19. I certainly understand that part of what is implied there. Also, if you're known as a slut, is it good to have that reputation? Doesn't that hurt you in a lot of ways? That there are various ways that could happen. But I have had students, some students have said that they thought the mother was kind of projecting here, that perhaps she was the one who became, you know, whose whose sex life interfered with her life. And so she's really coming hard at the little girl about that, younger girl, and that's why it gets repeated so much. But all right, that's one. Notice though that not everything is the same level. Not everything's like iron the shirt or iron the pants. In particular, hold on just a second. Let's see. Notice she says in this passage, this is how to make a bread pudding. This is how to make dacuna. This is how to make a pepper pot. This is how to make a good medicine for a cold. This is how to make a good medicine to throw away a child before it even becomes a child. What's that last advice about?
Abortion.
It's trying to write how to get rid of a fertilized fetus, right? Or a fetus, a fertilized egg. It's almost like a homemade remedy of what, isn't it called Plan B, where you can have a pill that you take a day after pill. And so that's a very serious thing, and it gets back to the sexual concerns. So mainly I just wanted to show you that, get us to think together about the variety of advice here, and that why some are more serious than others. I think that the how to throw a child away is a much more serious bit of advice than how to sweep the corner, or even setting a breakfast table. Those might be good manners and so on, but that's a serious piece there. There's one other, let me give one other thing before we get to tone. Let me see if I'm having trouble spotting. Oh wait, right before that. This is an interesting thing. Don't throw stones at a blackbird because it might not be a blackbird at all. What does that mean? What is she getting at there? All right, while you're thinking, this was pretty funny. Don't squat down to play marbles. You're not a boy, right? She's telling her, sit like a lady or whatever. What's that, Luther? Was that an answer? All right, somebody give it, take a shot. What do you think she's saying when she says, don't throw stones at a blackbird because it might not be a blackbird at all?
In a more imaginative way, I think of it as like, don't put all of your eggs in a basket because it might not be what you think it is. But I don't know if I'm thinking like, like don't do things that I'm not telling you to do thinking that they're better for you because you don't really know what they are.
Good. Fernanda, I think she's definitely something about things may not be what they appear, right? Okay. And that's interesting that you got it from, you joined it with another proverb. This is a kind of a proverb, right? Don't throw stones at a blackbird because it may not be a blackbird at all, might not be. It's kind of another proverb. You said, don't put all your eggs in one basket because, that's usually like give yourself other options. But you put the emphasis on, you don't know whether that's the right basket, right? You don't know whether you got the right eggs. And so I do think that's part of what she's getting at there. All right. So let's shift to the tone. That's what I tried to ask you to write about. What is some tone that you heard here, and where did it come out?
I took her tone as like strict, like she comes off like a strict guardian, because not trying to like be personal or anything, but like my family's from Jamaica and I hear like tones like this a lot, whether it's from like an aunt or a grandmother. Like they talk really aggressive, but we learn not to take everything so personal and so literal from like a young age.
Okay, but very good. I appreciate you sharing your background there too, Kalia. And an aunt, I said aunt, but I know that aunt is a preferred pronunciation too. And I do hear, and you can hear that you can hear this could be more than one maternal voice even, but but strict, you started with strict because mainly she is making a lot of rules, right?
Yeah.
She's giving a bunch of rules here. So strict is definitely part of the tone. What's another element? What are some other tones that you heard? I don't think the tone is monolithic here. Let me say that. It's not one thing. It varies in different spots. What other tone did you happen to think of besides strict?
I heard like it would be like strict, but then it would be comforting and then like informative. I don't
Good.
know, like it kind of like bounced all around. Like she'll say, like I feel as though she'll give her advice, but then she'll add in like, but don't be a slut. So it's like sarcastic too at the same time.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure she's being sarcastic about don't be a slut. I have a feeling.
Nagging.
I have a
Sorry.
feeling she's being fairly serious there.
Yeah.
But Kalia, I think you're right. Some of it is just information, right? This is how you set a table. But you used another word there too, comforting. There is a good bit of comfort here as well too. What are some other words you learned? Let's see if we can hear a couple more variety or another adjective besides strict, comforting, informative.
Nagging.
Why do you say nagging?
Because given the way the poem is written without a single punctuation, it's made very clear that she's just droning on and on and on and on.
That's good, Tyler. No, I think that's true. That's part of it. She's really riding her in a way, okay? Or this person feels like she's been ridden. Let me show you a particular one. What about this one? This is how to bully a man. This is how a man bullies you. This is how I love a man. And if that doesn't work, there are other ways. And if they don't work, don't feel bad about giving up. What is the tone of that, you think?
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Who's that speaking?
It's Jay. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. But again, it's a pretty serious topic, right? This is how a man bullies you. This is how to love a man. But straightforward. But what about this? If this doesn't work, there are other ways. And if they don't work, don't feel too bad about giving up. Does that sound nagging or
That's the comforting.
Yeah, that's the comforting part for sure, isn't it? And it's kind of like a generous, don't worry. If things don't work out, you shouldn't just put up with them. Okay. And so there's a kind of a real strength in that. But I wanted us to see just the variety, and I look forward to seeing what you wrote about it. You should have posted your homework by now. I'm going to go back to the slides. Let's just stop for a minute. I want to go back and share with you some ideas from Dr. Freud that I think are relevant here. Let's see. Wait. Oh, I'm sorry. I see these are all the things that I couldn't show you. All right. Dr. Freud is the founder of psychotherapy, right? An Austrian. And the father of psychoanalysis, we say. And psychoanalysis is a form of psychotherapy that mainly involves dialogue, talking through a patient talking to an analyst. But think of all counseling, therapy, all grew out of what Freud created. Here are a couple of ideas from him. He does not believe that does not live according to his beliefs. He does not believe that does not live according to his belief. And I'm going to go a little quickly here, but this is mainly, I would like to get you to answer, but I think this is pointing to, if you don't behave, how you behave shows what you believe in, okay? Your belief doesn't matter if it doesn't influence your behavior. Here's an interesting one. Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. This is kind of a sense of like most of us would rather be children taken care of than adults who are responsible for things. Or, we all have that within us in some way. The virtuous man contents himself with dreaming that which the wicked man does in actual life. So this is an notice here is what's the difference between the virtuous man and the wicked man? Is it what they think?
The wicked man takes action.
The wicked man acts on something that the virtuous man only thinks about and can control. Okay. So again, it's what they're doing that makes the difference. There's no difference as far as what they desire, but a virtuous man could want to kill his neighbor, but he doesn't kill his neighbor. Okay. He just thinks it would feel good to murder that person. Okay. But doesn't. All right. All right. So the mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. Most of what goes on inside us is below the surface. And so he demonstrates, this is one diagram of that. Here at the top are our thoughts or perceptions. There's kind of a pre-conscious level of memories and stored knowledge, but below that, we have fears, we have violent motives, we have shameful experiences, irrational wishes, unacceptable sexual desires, selfish needs. This is who people are, is what Freud told us. This is what we carry with us. What we're showing the world is a very small part of what's going on inside us. And this is the part that's important for a girl. He said that our personalities result from a tension and balance or imbalance between what he called our id and our superego. You may have heard these terms before, but the id is our appetites, our drives, the need for food, sex, love, comfort, safety, power, thrills. That's like a guttural thing. The superego are the rules and principles that we live by and that keep our id in check and help us be healthy and honorable. Okay. So there's our appetites, what we want to do, and there's our superego, the rules telling us what we should be doing. And the ego is the result of the tension between those two, the way they balance out. And I'll skip this one. Let's go to this. So think of it this way: the superego are the rules up above, the ids, the appetites below, and your personality comes from here. Realize though that all of the rules aren't good. You could be so worried about being good that you never take any risk in your life. Okay, you never fall in love because you're too worried about all the things that could go wrong with that, whether maybe being viewed as a slut. There are lots of ways that the id can. I'm sorry. I have another example. Like, if you have a gambling, there are various addictions you might have. It might be good to take risk. Okay, it's a good quality in life to take risk. Abdi, you wrote about getting out of your comfort zone. That involves, disobeying your superego in some way, going where that you've been warned not to go, or your body's telling you not to go. But taking risk is a good thing, but becoming addicted to gambling is not. So a lot of things that might be good for you can go in the wrong direction. So the reason I put this up is that the superego is all about rule making, and that's what we're seeing in Girl. That we hear all of this advice that is trying to shape the young girl's superego, and it's trying to. What do we think those rules are trying to overcome? Why is she getting all that advice? What is the desired outcome? Let's just try to think about those two things.
Well, the desired outcome is at the ending. Oh, sorry. I didn't know you're still speaking.
No, go ahead, Tyler. The desired outcome's what?
Oh, it's at the ending of the poem.
And what does it say?
It says, "Do you think after all that you don't think the baker will let you touch the bread?" Meaning that if you follow these rules and if you play by the books, then certain privileges will be awarded to you.
Very good. Okay, so she's telling her this is what this is what it will be to be respectable. You would be someone the baker would trust. Okay, so she's trying to help her grow up to be or, whether all of her advice is good or not, it goes toward trying to help her be a respectable person, and the mother's view of what that means. Now, again, the girl could question a lot of this. Some people read this as being, like a very old-fashioned stereotype being imposed upon a girl, and that all girls don't want to spend their life ironing men's shirts and pants, and all girls don't want to spend their life setting tables. But that part of domesticity is part of life too. But this is where I think Freud is, this story is a great way to think about what Freud tells us, because it's so clear, the rule making. And so, we're almost at the end of the hour. Actually, I didn't realize that was all I thought forward. But, what I want us to think about, like one thing you can do with this, and I may think about, what is the advice you carry? Where did it come from? What do you hear over and over again? And I would be surprised if some of what went on here today in Girl isn't reminiscent of what you learned in one way or another growing up. There's a lot of kind of generic parental advice there, of, keep a clean nose, stay out of trouble. That's a lot of what's going on there. And that's a lot of what we heard from our parents, and we now tell, and those of us with children now are telling our children. All right. So I'm going to stop there. Do you have any other comments about Girl before we leave? I hope that helped you make good sense of it. All right. If you haven't posted your homework for Girl, please be sure, for Girl and in the waiting room, please do. And if you go to the assignment, you'll find the reading for Bullet in the Brain. And if you go to the homework assignments, you'll find those study questions that I put up earlier. Okay, they're both available there. So anything else? Excuse me. Okay, so do take a look at your own schedule. Go ahead and choose a couple of times on different days that you could meet with me, and email me. Some of you may have done that already, but go ahead and email me and I'll start setting up conferences. And I'm going to be trying to allow time so that I can look over your work before we talk, and just be able to give you good one-on-one feedback. And we will meet next Friday. Next Friday, we'll be talking about In the Waiting Room and Bullet in the Brain. And that will be our last meeting, the following week will be spring break and we won't be meeting. Okay. But next week will be the last meeting before the break. All right. If you don't have anything for me, have a good weekend, and let me hear from you. Yeah, and let me hear from you about your conference. Okay. Have a good day. Thank you. Y'all take care.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lakis, I actually had a question for you, if you didn't mind.
Is that Israel?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was actually a bit late today by like 30 minutes. I was trying to figure out a situation with the schoolwork and whatnot, and it turns out my laptop actually like died too as well. And I just want to know if that would be an issue with my attendance, because I know that there was a specific rule around like missing 3 days or something like that. I know I haven't missed 3. I think I've missed like 2.
No, but that doesn't matter. But Israel, you should go. When I get the class posted, the recording posted, you should go listen to the first part of the class to see what you missed.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And I'm more concerned, I can't remember, I don't believe I got your personal narrative. It's really important that you start, that you be keeping up. Did you turn in your narrative?
My personal narrative, the letter about me?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No, your assignment that was due, there was a letter about you, but then a couple of classes ago, I assigned a personal narrative, and that was a different essay.
Okay, then I'll get on that right now.
Well, you need to go to the essay assignments and read that. And if you have a question, get in touch with me. but that was assigned like 2 weeks ago.
Got you. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank
right.
you.
Jason, did you have a question?
Have a good day, Mr. Lakis.
You too, Israel. Jason?